Several arrests have been made in BC and Ontario in connection with a series of violent demonstrations on the weekend. The clashes took place outside Hindu temples in Surrey, Brampton and Mississauga. As well, there was a confrontation outside a Sikh gurdwara in Mississauga. Tonight, people gathered again outside a Brampton Hindu temple. No violence or arrests have been reported tonight. CBC's Jamie Strachan has more on what prompted these events to take place and how politicians at all levels are reacting.
Sunday at a Hindu temple in Brampton, just outside of Toronto. Violence. After demonstrators arrived holding banners in support of Khalistan, a proposed independent Sikh homeland in northern India. The protest happened as Indian consular officials were inside helping people with pension documents, though protesters say those officials gather information about the Sikh community.
They start hitting those people. They went inside the gate, and you can see in the video they were hitting with the stick to the devotee.
Hours later, protesters gathered outside of a nearby Sikh place of worship, some waving Indian flags.
They want to take control of the gurdwara and they want to harm worshippers.
3 people were arrested, though CBC News is not confirmed from which protest. And an off-duty police officer was suspended after he participated in the Hindu temple protest. In Surrey, British Columbia, similar demonstrations turned violent. Several people were arrested.
This is now sort of breaking out into fights and violence and attacks that are physical at these places of worship, whereas before it seemed to be acts of vandalism that happened in the middle of the night.
Particularly at places of prayer, that is just wrong.
In Canada, the violence was condemned at all political levels.
It should not be happening where people are attending to pray or attending to find peace, and to have violent clashes there is just completely wrong.
On X, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the violence unacceptable. But these local incidents were also noticed in India. Its Prime Minister condemned what he called a deliberate attack on a Hindu temple, adding that he expects the Canadian government to ensure justice and uphold the rule of law. Relations between the two countries are tense after Ottawa accused India of orchestrating attacks on Sikh activists on Canadian soil, including murder. India has denied the allegations. Meanwhile, in Brampton, a heightened police presence continues. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
For more on this, I spoke with Neilesh Bose, a history professor at the University of Victoria, and I asked him what he makes of the violence we saw at the temples in BC and Ontario on the weekend.
Well, it's a very troubling and disturbing state of affairs, and it showcases that the tensions arising out of the Khalistan movement and its various manifestations have risen to a level of violent demonstrations within Canada, but not so much in any place, but directed at within particular members of the South Asian community in Canada, which is something that is relatively recent and something that is noticed throughout India and throughout Canada.
I want to ask you about Indian Prime Minister Modi's response, but I want you to just sum up for our viewers what the Khalistan movement is and how big it is within the Sikh community in Canada.
Yeah, so the Khalistan movement, which waxes and wanes in terms of its support in different parts of the world, began back in its current form in the 1980s as a movement to create a separate state, primarily for Punjabi Sikhs, out of a certain part of the province of the Punjab in India, out of a variety of political demands from the Sikh communities of India. And that devolved into militant politics within India by the Indian state as well as by certain sectors of the movement. The support for the Khalistan movement is biggest in Canada, where the Punjabi Sikh population is by far the largest component of the South Asian diaspora in Canada. There's also support for the Khalistan movement in parts of the United States, parts of Great Britain, and parts of Australia. Notably, it is much stronger in these diasporic locations than it is in India itself.
But of course, not all Sikh people in Canada support the Khalistan movement, so it's certain segments of the population.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that just like within any religious community and within any portion of a nation state, there are great contestations within. And so there are many Punjabi Sikhs who are not at all affiliated with the Khalistan movement. And there are those who are, but do not embrace violent demonstrations or any form of extremism.
Neilesh Bose is a history professor at the University of Victoria.